On this episode of TWiP Talks, I sit down with my good friend, Miss Valerie Jardin. She's the host of Street Focused, one of our more popular shows on the TWiP network. She's almost at episode 50. In this episode of this show, we talk about where that show's going, the inception of that show, and how she's enjoying being a world-famous podcaster. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of TWiP Talks. I'm sitting here with my good friend and co-host of one of our most popular shows on the TWiP network, Ms. Valerie Jardin, who schooled me before we started recording to make sure I said her name correctly, which I did. Did I get it right, Valerie?
I was pretty close. Thank you, Frederick.
Just close? Come on. So what did I get? A B or a C?
Someday it'll be perfect.
Did I get a B? A B plus?
That's
an
a B. A B.
Ugh.
Big B.
I need to go hang out in Paris again, just so I can get the,
yes, you do.
The intonations and inflections of the Parisians. All right, cool. So this is cool. So this is going to be a really interesting episode of TWiP Talks because you are a pioneer on the TWiP network. And you remember when we were just starting, you invited me out to Paris and to one of your workshops out there. And we recorded the first little bits of Street Focus. We didn't even know what we were going to name the show back then.
We were thinking TWiP Street or something. Yeah, we did not know.
We didn't know. And then now it's like a household name in the street photography community, as is Valerie Jardin. Right?
Very good. B plus.
I'm getting there. Practice makes perfect. So first of all, I want to thank you for all your hard work and putting this killer show, Street Focus, out there every single week. People are loving it. As you know, you get tons of feedback. And the big metric is engagement on your posts, and people are engaged with everything you're doing. So congrats. You are now...
Thank you.
We're a year into it now, right?
Almost. Yeah, we're at episode 50. Yeah.
Episode 50. So happy birthday. Happy pre-birthday. So let's talk about Let's talk about Street Focus a little bit. And just for the folks that may not have listened to it, what's Street Focus about? And what's the gist of the show?
Well, Street Focus really is about street photography, but from what I hear, there are people who are not even photographers who are listening to the show. Yeah. So I think all photographers would enjoy it. And because it's a weekly podcast and it is focused on a genre, in order to keep it entertaining and not so repetitive with just interviews constantly, I do a rotation. So I have really 4 segments now rotating. And so we go from special guest and we talk about a special project or that they're working on. Mm-hmm. They could be somebody really famous or somebody nobody has ever heard of. I'm just looking for the interesting projects. Yep. Then I do a rotation with a Q&A and street challenge. That's really fun. I usually have a co-host on that episode. And then we answer listener questions. We talk about a new challenge, and then people are invited to submit their best photos for that challenge. Mm-hmm. They have about 3 weeks usually to enter. And then we had a lot of entries. It's always been fun. And then the next guest on that show will pick one winner, and I pick one winner, and they get a book from Rocky Nook, and it's and a moment of fame, and we post their picture on the blog post.
I love it.
And then I have a Street of the World segment, and that's I pick one city and I find a street photographer in that city, and they take me for a photo walk, basically. So we touch on best places to shoot, whether it's Tokyo or it's Sydney. And then cultural considerations, what to be mindful of as a street photographer, things like that. So that's a fun segment as well. And the latest segment that I introduced about 3 months ago, is street tips. And that I feature a well-known photographer, somebody that most street photographers will have heard of. And they give me their top 10 street tips. So their top secrets.
Love it.
And that's really fun. That's been really popular too.
See,
and fun for me.
I can tell from just how you talk about the show that you love doing it and you're excited about doing it, which comes through in the recording of the show too. Because if you were bummed about doing it, you're like, oh, I gotta go do this stupid show again. That would come through, right?
No, I wouldn't do it. I only do things I love to do.
I know that. I know. We talked about that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So in this year, a year into it, looking back over this past year, what are the big things that you've learned? Because I remember when we first started building the show and we were collaborating and throwing ideas back and forth as to what the show would be, you were a little scared. You were timid. You're like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
What if people don't like me? And now what?
Well, then you have to be tough. I mean, the minute you're out there, whether as a writer or as a podcaster, you gotta. I mean. And it's been 99.999%, people sending me lots of love and awesome feedback and being supportive and sharing. It's just been awesome. But there is that one person who's just going to stab you. And it hurts. It hurts so much because, they're not paying for this.
Right. Yeah.
I'm doing it. It comes from the heart. And then once in a while, you just get this person who just has nothing better to do than just to.
And I told you about that, right? I told you
it's hard.
in the beginning.
I'm super sensitive, so it's just hard to get over this. And I've been writing for so many years now, so you get used to it, and you try to ignore it, but. I think when it's something like a podcast where it's really your personality that comes through and it's not staged, it's not rehearsed, it hurts even more. I mean, when it's something you write, it's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah. People, it's, we talked about this when we were building the show, and there's always that element, and that's like in anything in life, whether you're on stage performing or, you're a street performer or a podcaster or whatever. There's always an element of someone out there that is not going to like what you're doing and feel compelled to tell you so. That, this is why I don't like what you're doing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Long posts and all this other stuff about granted, you're doing giving people a free content, but yet still, that's the nature of podcasting. All podcasters get that.
I know. And, lesson learned, I wouldn't want to run for office or anything.
No. Yeah. Can you imagine?
I know.
Takes a very special kind of person to put themselves out in front of millions and billions of people versus thousands and thousands, right?
Yeah. But it's been such an isolated incident and you learn to deal with it. But I can't, it does ruin your day. And it's just like reading a review. You get 100 good reviews and one that is going to be negative, and that's the one that's going to stick. And that's just human nature. So trying to learn not to be so sensitive, but that's hard. Otherwise, it's just been awesome meeting so many people that I would have never connected with. Yeah. And then also meeting them in real life, now that I travel a little bit more. Making new friends and sharing the love and just it's just so much fun when every day I get feedback from listeners via email, through my website or Twitter or whatever, and thanking me for doing what I'm doing and telling me how it's pretty much, changed their life. They just fell in love with street photography. They had never tried it before. And now that's what they do. And that's so rewarding. Yeah.
So let's talk about street photography a little bit, because I was having a conversation, I forget who it was with, but I was having a conversation a while back with someone about street photography and what it is. Is it photojournalism? Is it voyeuristic? Is it, trying to capture the flavor of a particular location? And then, so I want you as the street photography authority to define what street photography is. And then secondly, their other question was, what do you do with all those photos? Do you print them? Do you put them online to get likes? Are you keep them for yourself? Like, what's the purpose? So help us define this, Valerie.
Well, first of all, street photography, it's unrehearsed. It's life on the streets. It's a little bit voyeuristic for sure. And I think all street photographers have that in them. It's unprocessed. I mean, it's pretty raw image of life. I mean, not saying raw as in raw files, but raw as in we don't over do our images. We don't remove things and clone things. So that part is definitely photojournalistic. Although some people do, and there is no right or wrong answer. For me, it's the few seconds on per picture, and I'm out. It's just it has to be right. There's nothing I'm going to do to create the story after the fact. So the story has to be there. The emotion has to be there. That's why post-processing is really not a big deal. Yeah, it's really capturing. I think what drives us is the fact that we're capturing something that's never happened before, that will never happen again, and that no one ever will be able to capture, not even ourselves. We'll never be able to recreate that.
Yeah.
And that's that unique aspect, I think, is what really drives us. I mean, I'm not saying that that doesn't apply to other genres of photography, but certainly not to that extent.
Yeah.
I mean, the landscape photographer can come back and get a different light or a similar light, So, and I know landscape photography is tough and requires a lot of patience.
Every genre is tough.
In its own, yes. But street photography, I think that the appeal is really that fraction of a second, and being able to nail it, and the satisfaction you get from that, and for a lot of photographers is really resetting their expectations, because there are so many things we don't control, and when you get the keeper, you're not going to get 15 a day. That's impossible. So
I look at it. I kind of look at street, and tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong or off base. But when I look at street photography and the folks that are doing it, and kind of that ethos that you get into when you're out there on the street, it almost feels like the act of being out there is part of, you're not just going out there to get the photo, it's being there and getting photos at the same time. So it's a kind of a holistic thing. And it kind of makes me think of like hunting in a lot of ways. Hunters go out and it's not all about shooting or whatever you're doing when you're hunting. It's about being out there with nature, and is it similar? Is that a good analogy?
Definitely. I don't mind coming home empty.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. I still learn. You learn to see no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
So you could be out there not taking even one shot and you still improve. And it's more about it's more about photography than the photograph in a way. I don't know if you can even say that, but it's more about the hunt than the resulting image. I mean, that's the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Being out there with my camera in the zone is like no other feeling, really. Yeah. And it's funny because I think only street photographers understand that's like a secret code.
It's therapy. It's therapy.
It is therapy. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you get 3-4 great shots, or 3-4 average shots, and one that you're really proud of. Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah. So then, okay. So with those shots that you get, those 3-4 shots, that's the second part of the question. What do you do with all these? Especially you're out there all the time shooting. You must have gobs and gobs of awesome images that many folks have never seen. What's the ultimate goal of these images? Like in the hunter analogy, they may eat it, right? So they go out shooting ducks. They're going to eat the duck at the end of the day. Yeah. What do you do with your prey?
Well, I do sell some as fine art, but not every street photograph sells well as fine art. It's more the silhouettes and the minimalist shots that people are more drawn to. They're a little bit more artistic. People don't want to have a close-up portrait of a stranger hanging on their wall. So so you have to be selective as to what you plan on selling as fine art street photography, because not everything will appeal to a buyer. Yeah. And then I blog. I mean, for me, I blog. Whenever I spend a week in Paris, I'll probably post 3 blog posts with a series of images. I teach, so most of what I shoot, I only shoot for me. So most of what I shoot for teaching purposes, either to write articles or for my presentations. I've never done, and I've done hundreds of presentations. I have never done the same presentation twice. I always have to put new pictures because I have to keep it fresh for me. Good. And personal satisfaction. I mean, I put them on social media and sharing, inspiring, really. And for street photographers who don't make a living at this, it's Yeah, they share on social media. It's gratification, getting some recognitions and getting some feedback from photographers that they trust
To get better,
and
yeah.
in order to get better and getting their work critiqued. But that's hard. I mean and I'm really happy on Street Focus on the Google Plus group, which is at 900 and some members now, I think. Some members have started a community critique hangouts. So once in a while I'll pop in there if it's on my time zone and if I'm not traveling, but so anyone can join, up to 10 people, and then they bring 1 or 2 pictures. I'm not sure if they set a number, and then they critique each other's work. And that's awesome. That really is the best way to learn, because not only you learn from your own critique, but you learn from the others.
That's cool. And where's that at? That's a Google
that's
Plus
on the
community?
Street. Yeah, that's on the Street Focus on Google Plus.
And we'll link to that in the show notes. Yeah.
And on Facebook, I have somebody else taking care of 2 people as admins for the Facebook group. They have weekly challenges, and they're starting that on Google Plus as well. So I have some good people handling all this for me, because I just couldn't keep.
Very cool. That's how you do it, right? Yeah. That's how you extend and replicate yourself.
That's right.
All right. I want to switch gears a little bit. You probably have the title of being the most non-gear focused person that I know, right? But when you find a piece of gear that you love it and you use it, right? Because when we met, you weren't shooting Fuji, you were shooting something else. I forget what it was.
Well, originally I was a Canon shooter.
Canon, yeah. And then last year or maybe a little bit longer
2.5 years ago, I switched to Fuji. Yeah.
You switched to Fuji, and now you love Fuji, right? So
and I'm an official Fuji ex-photographer for Fujifilm USA now. So
that's crazy. Okay, so tell me what is it about Fuji that fits so well for street photography for you?
Well, first of all, they were the first ones, I believe, to come out with that rangefinder style camera that was completely silent and inconspicuous, and with dials. I mean, it was just like, it's the photographer's camera. I don't care for touch screens. I like dials, and when I saw that camera, I didn't get the first one. I got the S version about a year later.
X100S,
S, yes, and it just felt right. And I said that so many times. People are probably so tired of hearing it, but it finally felt like an extension of my vision. And it's the first camera ever that I felt that way about. I was shooting 5D Mark II. I had L lenses because I was, switching from being a commercial photographer to just shooting for me and teaching. And that was great gear, but I never looked back. I went from the Canon 5D Mark II with all those lenses to a camera that you can't even change the lens, and you're stuck at 23 millimeter. That was awesome. And I never looked back. And I do believe that it's made me a better photographer. And because it doesn't get in the way, and it's simple, and it's fun. Because I think if it's fun, you're gonna go out more, you're gonna shoot more, you're gonna do better work. And that's brought that joy back in photography. And I hear from others, whether they switch to a Fuji or whatever, something smaller that they could take out with them everywhere. They've improved in their craft for sure, and it's brought the joy back in their lives for sure, because they're not carrying tons of gear and
which lenses should I take behind. And this and all.
Exactly.
I know. So okay, so where's your Canon gear now? Did you get rid of it all?
I sold everything. Yeah,
everything. You sold it all.
Yeah,
wow.
I think I have the 50D, I think, that I still have for my son, who is taking photography in school. So I figure they still use DSLR, so I figure I'll keep that one for him. But
see, you're an all-in kind of person. I love it. So when you're out there, out and about, you mentioned RAW before. Are you a RAW shooter? Are you shooting JPEG and processing in camera? What's your flow there?
No, I shoot RAW for the good reason that once you're in Lightroom, you have all the camera profiles from the Fuji available to you after the fact. So I can go right away into Fuji Velvia, click on that, and it will give me the JPEG that I would have had in camera. But then I have the raw file, so I have more options. I can go into the Fuji black and white with yellow filter automatically. One click, I'm done. And usually that's good enough because those are so awesome in camera. So I'm not sure that was available right away in Lightroom, or maybe I just didn't figure it out till later. But I love the JPEG in that camera, especially for street photography. That was plenty
I've heard
good,
people just rave about the JPEG processing.
That's why now, I mean, I instead of doing a RAW plus JPEG or just JPEG alone, I just shoot RAW, and then I go into profile on Lightroom right away, and then pick the camera profile I want. And can't beat those. I mean, although I'm mostly black and white, but when I want something to pop, I was in Rome, and you use the Fuji Velvia, on those orange and yellow walls. Pretty awesome.
Yeah. See, the life of Valerie. What about video? Are you dabbling in that at all yet?
Nope.
No video yet?
I find good people who can do it for me.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't have time.
Yeah. You say that now. We'll check in about a year. You're going to be like, I've started dabbling in video. It's kind of cool.
I have to have an extra 2 days to every week.
Yeah. It's a little intense. All right, let's wrap this up, Valerie. So what's next for Street Focus? Like, where are you thinking about taking the show?
Well, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, see how it goes. I love to get feedback from people. And I know not everybody likes every segment. Some people don't really like the street of the world because they figure, well, I don't know, I'll never go to Sydney, so what do I care? But a lot of people love those because even if they're never going to go there, they feel like they're traveling through the show.
Exactly.
So I'm going to have a lot of cities to cover, so I'm not going to run out of that segment anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I'm always looking for photographers who are working on some projects that are interesting. And they don't have to be purely street. I mean, people that can be working on I'm like, this episode 50 will be a project about limitations and going out within a certain perimeter in your city and shooting for the day. So people that are working on those types of projects that are mostly urban. I've had an episode about urbex photography, so that's not street photography per se, but most street photographers are kind of into that kind of thing too. Yeah.
So lots of cool stuff coming up. Congrats again on your fantastic show. You, like I said at the beginning, you're a pioneer, right? Because this is I think your show was the first kind of original from the ground up show that we launched, right? Because we had All About the Gear, but we kind of had that running as a YouTube show, and then we translated it over to a podcast format. But yours was the first, let's build a show around street photography and launch it. And, a new host and the whole 9 yards. And look at you. You took the football and ran with it. I love it.
Thank you for trusting me with that because I wasn't sure. It's a lot of work to come up with something new every week.
That was one of your fears. Yeah.
That's right. And the challenge of traveling and having, 4 or 5 episodes ready in the can before you can leave. And so I was a bit nervous about that, but with some planning and surrounding myself with good people, and it's been pretty good.
And we've got great editors that handle all that stuff. And
shout out to Russell.
Russell, yes. And he's smiling right now as he's watching this episode, editing it. All right. Well, cool. What are the URLs again that folks should head over to check out the show and your other presences online?
Well, everything is actually linked. Even the show now is a direct link from my website, and that's at valeriejardinphotography.com, and that's VALERIEJARDIN photography, all in one word.
There you go.
And the show is on thisweekinphoto.com/streetfocus.
Yes, love it. Thanks a lot, Valerie.
Thank you.
We'll be listening and checking out your work on Street Focus going forward. TWiP listeners, be sure to head over to Valerie's show. Check it out. Give her some love and keep Street Focus going.
Thanks.
See you later.